Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 2016 One Nation of Gamers Circuit feature tournament number 3. We're about to jump into the second match of the day. It's TerrenceM versus Chakki. My name is TJ, and I'm joined by That's Admirable. And we were even talking about it during the break. An interesting last game from Just Saying and Phone Tap, where Just Saying took the victory and went on to the winner's round. But really interesting choices, and his strategy of countering Zoo, it seemed, really paid off.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you expect Zoo to be a very strong portion of this, I think it helps that he's playing against a strong field that will recognize the power of that deck and be very liable to bring it. Building a lineup that's strong to that in Conquest gives you a very clear win condition where it's your decks are very strong versus Zoo and have a chance to beat other things. So that matchup's so hard to beat for so many other decks that if you tailor your decks to be good against that, some of the disadvantages you incur along the way are more than made up for in that Zoo matchup. So very strong performance from him and really showing why he's been so successful in Conquest over the last few months.
Yeah, we'll see if he's able to make it on to the final day on Sunday with one more win. But I'll start talking about this next match. It's TerrenceM versus Chakki. And Chakki's a player, of course, that you're very familiar with. He's your main practice partner, if I understand that correctly. And he's a player that both of us have known for a very long time with casting and things like that. He does have the same class lineup as he did for the prelims, where he played all aggro decks with Beast Druid aggressive style deck, with Pirate Warrior, with aggressive Shaman. Do you think he's going with that same list, or do you think it's maybe something different to shake things up?
Well, I will say that for that tournament in particular, the NA prelims, we constructed that lineup to specifically play against a very particular field that we thought was going to be there. Mm-hmm. And since then, we've seen a lot of evolution. I mean, just in the last couple of weeks, we've seen so many different things come up. Pirate Warrior, it doesn't really catch people by surprise anymore, so it's very difficult to pick up a win with. People tend to have like one or two cards in there that can really swing that matchup in their favor. And Druid has kind of been in this weird spot where I've actually had some pretty solid success with Yogg-Saron Token Druid lately. You kind of look at it and it's like, yeah, this is kind of a joke deck. But then you start playing it and you're like, wow, this deck is not a joke. It's really strong. And not only that, but Cthulhu Druid has been a deck that I've been performing very well with lately. I'm 65% with Cthulhu Druid over the last 2 weeks, over the course of about 75 games. But Chakki, I know, was still a big proponent of Beast Druid. I don't think we came to the build we quite wanted. But to see him bringing Druid in general is very interesting to me, because I spoke with him about this a couple days ago, and he didn't think Druid is very strong. So curious what he's cooked up in this one. Maybe he's going off the word of his teammate Green Sheep, who is a very big fan of Cthulhu Druid and a big proponent of the deck. Shaman, not a surprise to see Chakki bring this. This is going to have Argent Horse Riders and Flame Wreath faces probably. And I think it's almost guaranteed that Warlock is a Zoo deck when you're talking about Chakki. So if Terrence has brought a lineup similar to what Just Saying did, he could have a very strong matchup versus Chakki's Zoo deck. And Freeze Mage being the opener here, I don't think Shaman is quite the matchup he was looking for, but I don't think he's disappointed to see this one.
Yeah, I think he's okay with this. Of course, we talked about this matchup in the last match, where you really have to get it going pretty quickly as a Shaman in order to have good matchups. But both Terrence and Chakki played a more control-heavy style at DreamHack Austin. But of course, it's hard to compare that to this. Even though they both made it to the finals, it was a very different meta. It was last year's standing format, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see very different decks. And right off the bat, it is very different, and we'll definitely have to see. But Cthulhu Druid. Another quick thing is, I think like 3 out of the top 5 legend placers on the North American ladder this season were playing Cthulhu Druid. I know Silent Storm, Neobility, and BB Gun, who I think finished like 3, 4, and 5, or very close to it. We're all playing Cthulhu Druid at the high legend. And
Silent Storm actually hit rank 1 with it and just sat. So he only had 2 positions decay from his finish. I mean, a very strong lead if that was the case. And to me, the story in this matchup, it is a replay of the finals of DreamHack Austin, but sort of the story there was, how do players adapt to a new metagame? No one's been playing Last Hero Standing recently. Can they figure it out in time? And these two clearly did. They had extremely strong lineups. Now at this point, we see a little bit more stuff becoming solid, a few more decks taking very strong shells. How have they adapted since then? This is the second story of adaptation, and if Chakki can go 2-0 against Terrence in the last 2 times that they played, I'd have to say that he's getting the better in terms of the adaptation side of things. I think Terrence is doing a good job, but Chakki just basically continues to play what he believes are the strongest decks, and that's been very successful for him so far. And these turns are panning out very cleanly here as well. Able to answer the Loot Hoarder with just a Flame Juggler. This is going to be Argent Horse Rider into Abusive Sergeant Feral Spirit next turn. His curve is looking beautiful, and playing the Feral Spirit on next turn doesn't even really disrupt him that much unless he draws a 4 or a 5 drop. But he's actually just going to go for Feral Spirits this turn, which I'm very surprised by, because this yields about the same amount of damage as the Argent Horse Rider does.
Yeah. And what it also does is just sort of it messes up his curve a little bit as well. He can't fit as much stuff into the next turn. But another storyline there is this is actually Chakki's second feature tournament. He wasn't happy with his tournament in the last, or his performance in the last feature tournament, and so he decided to just go ahead and win an open. And that's an impressive thing to do. Chakki, one of the top performers so far in the One Nation of Gamers 2016 circuit, and I'd say one of the top performers in North America in 2016 in general. So
yeah, to kind of touch more on that, by the way, so he won DreamHack. He made top 8 at North American Winter Championship. He won DreamHack Austin. He won the ONOG Open after that, and yesterday he actually won another Open Cup to solidify himself 3 points for this week as well. Chakki has just been on fire since Old Gods have come out, and really showing you why he's such a force in these kinds of metagames. He adapts very quickly, he finds very powerful decks, and he's a data-driven player. He's going to play lots of games with all these builds and figure out which ones are winning the most for him.
Yeah, an interesting choice here, which is a little bit weird for Chakki, is the Thing from Below, which wasn't a card that he was previously running, and that might give a nod to his earlier choice to go for the Feral Spirits as opposed to the Argent Horse Rider. This line of play means he fits in more totems overall, knowing he's going to totem after the turn of Feral Spirits, which means that Things from Below are going to be cheaper. It's a little convoluted, but those are the types of things you sort of have to think about when you make those deck building choices. And he's going to put himself in a pretty good spot. Even a 5/5 with Taunt for 5 is pretty reasonable. So he's just going to get fireballed down, but he's managed to put on some damage early on in this game. He's really going to be looking for that Doom Hammer, which you mentioned is one of the keys to success in this matchup and in most Shaman matchups.
Yeah, definitely looking really good. Talking about Terrence a little bit further, too, I don't want to just give Chakki all the credit here. Terrence has been doing pretty well for himself. Gosu Gamers ranking, he's actually ranked number 6 in North America and 25 in the world right now, according to their ranking system. So not a slouch on his side either. A couple of top 25 finishes as well in his latter career. In this game, Chakki's gone wide on the board, and it's going to start getting punished right here. Blizzard into Flame Strike into Emperor Thorson. I mean, Terrence is pretty darn close to just shutting down this board. The only thing I think he's worried about is a Doomhammer. Mm-hmm. He's going to consider Frostnova here as well. I mean, Frostnova certainly has some good considerations.
Frostnova allows you to fit in the Ice Block as well, which sort of just, I mean, when else are you going to have time to play it is his thought process. He's thinking, well, next turn I'm going to Blizzard or Flame Strike, and then the turn after that, I'm probably going to want to develop Emperor Thorson, things like that. So, the Doomhammer right off the top and right on time.
Yeah, that is a super good draw for Chakki at this point. Does have threat on the Ice Block pop next turn.
Mm-hmm. A threat from hand.
Yes, exactly. That's the really important part about this. Terrence is forced to clear the board in fear of getting his Ice Block popped. Chakki just has the pop from hand, and the second Rockbiter gets drawn. Terrence, he's going to have to use a Frostbolt just to try to keep himself alive at this point. He doesn't have Alexstrasza near. The Blizzards are starting to become not good, which is very rare in an aggro matchup, but that's the power that Doomhammer provides here. And Chakki gets the good news. It's not Ice Barrier. So that means this block is popped, and multi-dynamic threat here. Terrence has to invest 2 mana to actually finish off the board here. He has to freeze Chakki's face, and he's left with 4 mana to be able to take care of it. And now even another threat on board.
I mean, Ice Barrier is something. It's going to be an extra layer of protection. Of course, it doesn't protect against burn spells, which Chakki is likely to have. It seems like a more aggressively themed Shaman with Things from Below because of the Argent Horse Riders. Chakki just loves that card in general. But a Lightning Bolt even could go through an Ice Barrier.
I love Argent Horse Rider too. This is looking to me like the 6-0 build where he tends to run Thing from Below and Flame Wreath Faceless. Just wants to have very powerful things to do in the late game if your early game gets answered. And I know that Chakki and Sixo practice together. Not a surprise to see this build coming in. It is super powerful. And, I mean, everybody kind of knows the Shaman's good at this point. But, I mean, this is just too much for this one. I mean, Freeze Mage is definitely, I'd say, pretty solid versus Shaman, but in this situation, just not really going to get the job done here. So Ice Barrier does protect him for a turn here. 5, 6, 7. Chakki looking for 3 damage here.
There's the Flaming Faceless. So you were correct, and now it's like Terrence has to deal with so many threats that are being put on the board. He still has to deal with the looming threat of the Doomhammer. He'll have to deal with the board that's going to be there anyway, and then he has to deal with the Flaming Faces on top of that. And of course,
Chakki even sniffs out that this is Ice Barrier instead of Ice Block with that Abusive Sergeant. I mean, potentially sacrificing 2 long-term damage there. Like, say your opponent Alex Strauss's or has more ways to freeze down the board and then Ice Barrier afterwards. With that Ice Lance, I mean, it feels like it's a welcome draw at this point. Just anything to try to extend your life.
Yeah. But I mean, he's starting to just run out of stuff. I mean, that's an Ice Barrier down, Ice Block down. He doesn't have Cycle in his hand. Power Blast is effectively dead because he doesn't have enough burn, and Lava Burst, he's just a spell power totem away from just winning the game on the spot.
And he gets it. Wow, everything's just been rolling Chakki's way. Now, I'll tell you what, you build good, you play good, you run good. That is the ultimate winning combination, and sort of just Chakki is on fire lately. Just everything really rolling his way. Yeah. And that's the thing about it, is when you see players go on these big hot streaks, they are certainly playing very good. Yeah. But they're also getting just the right timings on these little things that make huge differences. I mean, closing out the game a turn earlier there, it may not have any difference on the outcome of that game, even if it's just a few percentage points, though. But those few percentages are what you can thrive on in tournaments like this.
Yeah, very true. And, that's a really solid win for Chakki early on, even though with the more aggressive Shaman, a lot of times you can say, well, if you get a good start, then you can just roll over a Freeze Mage. But that's a matchup that's not easy in any regard. And as you mentioned earlier, you talked about sort of the psychological aspect of winning that first game, not only in a series, but as you go into a tournament. Game 1 of day 1 really sort of just sets the pace, and we'll see if Chakki can keep that going. He's going to throw